Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dumbing Down Data. I'm your host, Carol, and today we have Nick with us at the AI4 2023 conference, and he's going to speak a little bit about himself and what he does. So why don't we start with what do? You just shared your community manager. What is that? What do you do? What's your background? Tell us everything.
Yes, Carol, thank you for receiving me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a community manager at the OpenSource Initiative. We're working with opensourceai, so it's glad to be here in Las Vegas at this conference, AI4, and to talk about open source and AI, such a wonderful topic.
So what do you do in your day-to-day job? What does it look like?
Yes, so I work together with different communities, so open source developers and AI practitioners as well, and I enjoy very much working together with people.
How did you break into the industry? I know that you have a background in tech, but what interested you in the first place?
Yes, so while I do have a technical background, I always loved the community aspects and also open source. I'm very much into open source. So it's interesting because to work with technology, you don't have to have a technical background. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. You can be a developer, but you can also help organize events, help with documentation. There's a whole bunch of opportunities there.
And what interested you specifically in the tech world?
So I love communities. I love this aspect of people working together, collaborating worldwide to develop something bigger than themselves, right? So open source represents that. How can strangers from across the world build something together that works and that's fantastic? We can see this in AI. There are a lot of open source AI technologies, and one of the best AI softwares technologies, they are almost always open source. So this is great to see.
I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about open source, so why don't you dumb down open source for us a little bit? What is that?
Yes. So open source is when you have a source code, a machine code, right? That people can read actually that codes, and they can study that, they can make adjustments, change it, and share with their friends what they're doing. So we see this on GitHub. People can create any open source project, they upload it to GitHub, and they call their friends and say, hey, look what I'm developing. And people start working together from all over the world. So open source is about collaboration, right? It's about developing something much bigger than just your own pet projects. It's about calling everyone and just creating something huge and fantastic.
It's actually very relevant to what this whole podcast is about, which is how do you break into tech, and the fact that open source is out there is an incredible way to learn from other people. So it's a question I am going to ask you, and I mean, you touched on the fact that you have a few friends, or you have friends that you know that have broken into technology, but also how do you use open source to maybe dabble into the world of technology? So the question here is, if you were to give advice to people here who want to break into tech, they may want to break in by going into a role that isn't maybe technical, but even if it is, to the point of open source, how would you recommend people start? Maybe it's using open source and everything like that, but how would you recommend people start? Where do they go to start breaking into the world of technology?
Yes, so right now is the perfect moment to enter this, even if you're not technical. Why that is? Because there are several tools that are now in place to help you to break into tech. Even if you're not technical, there are some low-code platforms. You can also use ChatGPT or other technologies that will help you to create like codes or whatever you want. So let me just give you an example, right? Let's suppose that you have an idea and you want to develop something, but you're not a coder, you're not a developer. You can go to ChatGPT and say, I want to create this type of application, and please give me a template or a starting point. And ChatGPT or other technologies will give you that starts, and you don't have to learn. You don't have to know how to code, and you can learn with that, and ask help, and it makes this application better and better. You can upload that to GitHub and ask your friends for help. So it's the perfect moment. Also, just because you are breaking into tech doesn't mean that you actually have to learn to code or to be a developer. You can do so much stuff. Documentation, organizing events, working with community members as well. So it's a whole world there, and do what you're passionate about, right? Yeah.
I think that's a really important one, and something that we hear a lot here is really finding what you really enjoy doing. And I think that sometimes if you chase that dream, you might find yourself in technology if that works for you. But what is it about your job that you love? What's a fun fact about it?
Yes, so I get to work together with a lot of communities. So in the AI space, open source supply chain as well, and I'm always learning and always getting to know different people. So this is wonderful, and this is something that you can do as well. You can learn the technology behind it, but most importantly, getting in touch with people and working with them. You can work as a program manager, a project manager, and that requires people skills. This is the most important thing that I want to highlight. It's not about technology, it's about people. If you like working with people, technology it just happens to be there, but you're working with people. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
I love that you said that, and I think it's so important because, I mean, the reason I started this podcast was because I realized that technology seems like this really big mystical world, but inside of it is, like you said, there's people. And knowing how to talk to people, communicate with people, use open source AI stuff to learn how to code or whatever the case is, like people are behind all of that. And there is a nature of creativity. Do you feel like you do a lot of creative stuff when in your own job as well?
Exactly. What's most important are the people skills, the creative skills, and being able to learn. If you want to learn, you can do it. And there are those technologies. AI is helping to dumb down the technology to make it easier for you to develop, to create whatever you want. So it's just a question of willpower, of having those people skills and working with everyone, right, to make it happen. So
yeah, I think one of the opening speakers yesterday in the conference talked about how AI is a tool that allows us to do what we're already doing better.
Yeah.
So it really is just a tool, but at the end of the day, the people skills behind it, the soft skills that we don't really think are actually applicable in tech are the most applicable skills in tech. So exactly. I love that you're saying that. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and everything like that. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close?
Yes, so I'm really happy to be at this conference, to meet people like you, Carol. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's fantastic to be here in Las Vegas, and I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to Dumbing Down Data or like the episode if you do. Share in your comments anything that you learned, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.